Hello everyone, this is Rona from eMaint Enterprises, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this month's Best Practices webinar. And I'm always pleased when I have on the line one of our own. I have with me today Greg Perry, who's a senior consultant with the professional services team at eMaint, and he's going to be presenting today's the 10 keys to CMMS implementation success. And thanks, Greg, for joining us today. And if you want to advance the slide, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Greg's background. He's been in maintenance and reliability for over 15 years with world-class maintenance projects and CMMS implementations. He delivers a whole host of services to eMaint clients and is very active in various professional societies and is a regular contributor to Reliability Web and Uptime Elements magazine, and is also a CRL. And hey, Greg, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Rona.
And Greg, since we did have so many registrants today, there was well over 400, and I want to give everyone a chance to log in. And before we get started, Greg, I know you've often told me that CMMS is more than just implementing software. It's a whole journey. And many people think of our services team as just providing help and getting the software up and going, but I think success is so much more than that. And maybe you can kind of share with the clients some of the other ways in which you've helped our clients who are in different steps of their evolution with CMMS.
Absolutely. The CMMS is, as you know, is a tool that you use in your journey for asset management and reliability journey. Of course, with a world-class CMMS should be married up with world-class reliability and asset management principles. And so what we bring to the table is a host of other services, not just offering the software, but also helping you with your journey with CMMS best practices, and also to make sure that your best practices support the CMMS. And we also want to be able to make sure that we help you with cultural support, because as you know, at the end of the day, it's all about culture, right? So if you got your culture in check, everything else will fall in line. You're going to learn in the presentation, the CMMS is not a magic bullet, it's not a magic wand, but it's certainly a yin and yang here with best practices. Either one you got to have.
Oh, great. All right, Greg, just before we get started, a few quick housekeeping notes to our listeners out there. I do have your phones muted because we are recording today's session. We'll share it with all of the attendees so that you can share it with your team. We're also happy to share a copy, a PDF of the slide deck, and we'll have a brief survey at the end where you can check it off if you'd like to receive a copy. And Greg has agreed to stay for the full hour and answer any questions that you might have. So I would just ask you can type your questions at any time into the question box at GoToWebinar, and then I'll read them to Greg at the conclusion of the session. All right, so without anything further, Greg, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate it, Rona. I want to kick this thing off with, we're going to talk about 10 key CMMS implementation steps, but I want to talk a little bit to the slide that you're looking at now. It kind of outlines our professional services offerings and our layout and how we support your CMMS. We're not just a CMMS company. We also are a team of professionals that are well-versed in maintenance best practices and maintenance principle best practices, world-class. And we want to make sure that we offer you not just, again, a CMMS piece, but also any help or understanding, coaching, mentoring, guidance towards any other project that you may be interested in using your CMMS to help launch. So we do have assessment services, go-live support services, as well as maintenance and reliability workshops as well to support these best practices and move forward. If you have any questions about professional services, of course, you can reach out to us and we'll be happy to engage and answer any questions you may have. So what is a CMMS? Computer Maintenance Management Software. That's what CMMS stands for, and it's also known as an Enterprise Asset Management Tool. So more importantly, understanding what a CMMS is not. A CMMS is not a procurement system or a financial system. Some of you will be
Hello, Greg. Are you there?
enterprise asset management type solution.
Okay.
All right, so we're good, Rhoda?
Yes, we're good. It seems like the audio had cut out for a moment.
Ooh, okay, so sorry about that. So hope it doesn't continue. So after knowing what a CMMS is, and of course what the definition is, a computer maintenance management software, what is the purpose of a CMMS? As I alluded to earlier, it is a maintenance tool. It's the tool that you use to run your everyday maintenance needs. It provides central storage location of all your information for your assets, for your parts, for your work order history. It's also, hopefully, you're using it to track your failures and your failure modes. Any information that you may be collecting from proactive activities or proactive maintenance strategies like PDM, it's collecting that data in the condition monitoring section. It's running reports for you. It's giving you the data that you need so that you can make better decisions, maintenance decisions, and business decisions, and also tracks activity over the lifetime of an asset. So any CMMS will have its core, and at the core will be work orders and assets. So looking at a typical CMMS environment, as you can notice here in this picture, we have several key players that are involved, all the way through the life cycle of a work order, and also the involvement of other key departments that are holistically delivering maintenance principles and world-class principle solutions in your organization and in your company. So we have supervisors and managers on the maintenance side interacting with CMMS planners and schedulers, interacting with the administrators, interacting with the technicians and the vendors. Over on the right, we see inventory management with our stores involvement, and we also see purchasing and their procurement involvement. This is a typical CMMS environment in the CMMS world. All are key players in their quest and on your asset management and reliability journey. So a good question is, why an organization needs a CMMS? Well, it basically helps you track total cost of operation so that you know where monies are being spent, where time is being spent, where resources are allocated. It's a business tool, and we said it's a maintenance tool, but it also is a business tool. And so the key point is to make sure that you're gathering the right data and the right information to make those informed decisions and adjustments that are needed so that you maintain your asset management reliability journey. Often you'll find that you'll find that you're on two different journeys, and sometimes not even on, but just one journey. There is that asset management and reliability journey coupled with your CMMS journey. And we want to make sure that there is harmony in between the two. So with that, so you want to implement a new CMMS, and you want to start with what I'll call the wish, want, needs synergy. Okay, my experience has been implementing CMMS implementations for so many years. The first thing I'll hear is the wish list. So we wish for this, and we wish for that, and we wish it did that, and we wish it did this. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that you narrow that down and focus and get it down to a want list. Okay, that's going to be shorter than the wish list. And then we want to further focus and narrow that down to what are your needs. Okay, so we want to make sure that we drive the want to feed the wishes in order to support the end game, which is continuous improvements, equipment effectiveness, and also reduced overall total cost of ownership, any of the triple bottom lines that you may wish to achieve. So with maintenance wishes, why you wish to take the first step with your CMMS implementation. Well, may say you want to move towards world class. Okay? Well, if you want to move towards world class, then what are your goals that you're going to set out to focus on your journey? Are you looking for world class range time? Well, understand that's 55 to 65%. So most companies are in the 18 to 33% range. So do you know where you are? And so therefore, if you know where you are, then you know where to go next, or at least have a plan to get there. Work request and planning, 80% processed in the last or less than 5 days. These are measurements that you can set your goals for. Work scheduled, greater than 90% schedule compliance. Are you achieving that today? Do you want to achieve that tomorrow? Work completion, greater than 95%. So these will be a list of maintenance wishes and that you were hoping to use your CMMS to help drive towards your wants and needs. So why you want to take the first step is, of course, you want to improve your maintenance performance based on what? Well, CMMS is all about data. So you got to make sure that you have the right data and the right quality of data so that you can make the right quality decisions and the best possible decisions. You want to track and manage the maintenance backlog. Obviously, it's an electronic means. It helps it be more visible. It's more transparent. It gives you a better indication of where you're at as far as work order completion, work order management. You want to automate maintenance workflows and processes. So here we have a defect elimination opportunity. I'm pretty sure a lot of organizations have a lot of defects out there in their operations, in their state of mind of processes. And as a best practice with defect elimination, your CMMS can help you get rid of the dead wood, get rid of the unnecessary steps, streamline and focus so that you can achieve your goal and stay on the journey. You want to track your projects and associated maintenance costs, of course. CMMS at the core is maintenance costs, so we can see your total cost of ownership for assets and for maintenance expenditures. Okay, so for resource expenditures, what are your costs? How much are you spending? How much does this asset cost you in its total cost of ownership? What has it ran to date? When do you know it's time to replace the asset? What type of data are you collecting so that you can make sure that you're at your 60% of replacement asset value so that you can start capitalize and planning your financials so that you can have your replacements planned not just next year or in the moment, but 2-3 years down the road so you can be proactive. Want to prioritize your work and manage your resources, I'll mention that, and also want to track and control use of maintenance materials. So if we want to talk about RCM and reliability-centered maintenance and as a best practice, that has 3 legs that are part of what I like to call a 3-legged stool in that regard. So you have operations, you have maintenance, and you have materials, or what we call MRO. Using a CMMS to help you with all 3 of those areas is paramount. Because it does offer you that transparency, and it does offer you the sharing of data across each one of the domains there that I just mentioned that make up what's called RCM. You want to track and control everything that's called materials. I mean, when we talk about MRO, I'm talking about materials, repair, and overhaul, and O also stands for operations in some regards. So these are material parts. These are indirect materials. These are the material parts that are used in the repair and the care of an asset. Okay, I'm not talking about direct materials that are used to manufacture a product, and I'm certainly not talking about what they call roped open soap out there, which is the basic, how many cans of Lysol do you have on hand and things of that nature. So we're talking just maintenance materials here. So maintenance needs, why you need to take the first step. Well, I speak of this when I'm on site quite often, and I love this quote, measure what you treasure. It actually, I borrowed that from another leading consultant that I heard him say that, and it just rang with me, and the bells and lights and everything went off, and I said, it makes sense. So are you measuring what you treasure, or do you treasure what you measure? there is a difference. So in order to focus on why you're using a CMMS to begin with, try to understand that you want to measure what you treasure. So you treasure controlling cost. You treasure documenting failures. You treasure documenting downtime. You treasure your planning and scheduling and work execution and work identification. And you also treasure your performance analysis. So how do you measure these things? And so that's where the CMMS comes in. All right, Rona, poll question number 1.
Right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and launch the first poll, and please just type your responses. Where are you in your journey to reliability or operational excellence? And we know we have many people on the line that are all at various phases. And again, these are anonymous, your responses, but it really just helps Greg understand who's on the line with us today. If you're just you're trying to do a culture change, you've launched an initiative and you're looking for a tool, you're getting ready to re-implement an initiative, or your initiative was successful and you're in continuous improvement mode. All right, so it looks like we've got about 2/3 of the votes in, so I will give you all a few more seconds to weigh in, and then we'll close the poll. Oh, still a few more responses. People are thinking about it. Again, just type your responses directly in, and then we'll share them with all the attendees. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. And it looks like, Greg, what we learned is 1/3, or 33%, recognize a need to change the culture. I know that's something, I think we've even done some webinars on that topic. About 38%, over 1/3, say an initiative is launched, but they're looking for some better tools to help manage the process. And then we have a tie for the last two, 15% saying they're planning to re-implement a reliability initiative, and 15% say they have a successful initiative and they're in continuous improvement mode. All right, back to you, Greg.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate that, Rona. The results there are not surprising. It looks like if we were to take that and line that out, it looks like the classic Pareto, 80-20, where I find that to be most common amongst our clients that are looking for eMaint to embark as a partner in their journey with. So let's talk about the CMMS reliability journey. I mentioned that earlier, and this is a good little visual depiction of that. So where are you in your asset reliability concepts and asset management concepts, and then how harmonious is that with your CMMS building blocks? In other words, your journey on your CMMS, or use of your CMMS. And then, of course, together, combined, is where are you at with your continuous improvement as you're moving forward? As you know, there's two things that we can always say, which are true. One is asset management reliability journey is never a destination. It's just that. It's always a journey. And so is your CMMS journey. You're never fully implemented. You may have an initial implementation to get started, but as you move forward, you'll find that you are planning for the next improvement, and then you're planning for the next improvement. And so that's what you see with the Deming's Will here, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Where are you with your asset reliability journey and your CMMS journey? So do you go through a Plan, Do, Check, Act exercise and to see where you're at? Interesting that these clients that I've implemented or have visited that are current clients of eMaint, and I'll go back and do an assessment, I'll find that they're not harmonious. They're too far advanced with their CMMS with disregard to their actual asset management and a reliability journey, or it's vice versa. And I'm here to tell you that that doesn't work too well. So bringing this into harmonious, as I'm trying to say, alignment is really the key. So what are 10 keys to an implementation steps? let's dive into that. That's really what we all came for to hear and to talk about. Over my years of implementing CMMS software, I have boiled it down to these 10 keys. And if you follow these 10 keys in pretty much in order, if for every either initial implementation of a CMMS or a re-implementation of a CMMS or an implementation of a reliability or asset management initiative, this will help guide you through that process. There's no difference between using these 10 keys for a macro implementation versus a micro implementation. All right, so we're going to go through and talk about each one of these. Number one, your implementation team. These are your project champions. All right, these are the ones that are selected from a cross-functional team of all those key players. If you remember a couple of slides back, I showed you what the CMMS environment looks like, and you have different key players involved. Well, this is exactly what comprises your cross-functional team. This is not just a maintenance piece. This is not just a materials management piece. This is not just an operational piece. You know, this is together as a team. So we want to make sure that we have all of the key components here, or at least representation from each one. Executive leadership, paramount. And I think I can preach to the choir here with all the people that are on, that if you realize you don't have executive leadership with any initiative, you're set up for failure from the beginning. You need to have involvement with maintenance leadership. You need to have your project leaders involved. Subject matter experts, definitely. Now, IT liaisons, I think to expand on clarity there, we are software as a service, so we are in the cloud, but we do have mobile solutions, so you might want to bring IT involved to help guide you through that navigational forest of mobile. Okay, so what can the IT do to help you support those technologies? Implementation consultants, of course, and then the users themselves, very key to have representation of the end users involved with your cross-functional team, with your implementation team. That screen just basically reiterates what I just said of who should be on the team. So once you have your team together, your team needs to understand the core familiarization of the CMMS. You know, what can the CMMS do? What can the CMMS not do? How can the CMMS fit into your plan of your implementation plan, or your goal and your end in mind of why you're implementing to begin with? So we need to get all the team members on the same page, understand the significance of the CMMS solution, and also understanding the significance of their role in making it a success. But very paramount. So once they understand what the CMMS can do from a core, and I'm not talking about a deep dive here, I'm not talking about a very intensive training where they know how to get down into the weeds of the CMMS. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about from a core perspective. How do work orders work? What does work order execution look like? How does it behave? What about asset registry? How does that maintain? How does that look like? How does parts get entered into the system? What is the processes involved in getting the data into the system and maintaining the data? Understanding how each one of the CMMS modules, and usually all CMMS are broken up into types of modules: assets, work orders, requests, parts management. How do they interact? How do they interrelate? So once the core team has the familiarization of the CMMS, they're more educated. The whole question of you don't know what you don't know, you know, then it doesn't become a problem or a stumbling block. All right, so get the core team familiarization what the software can do. Definition of core team familiarization, you know, how the system will be utilized in the flow of data to ensure standardization. Again, some of these things I've already mentioned, and also for identifying the purpose. Okay, seamlessly blended into everyday use. Definitely trying to solve a problem, and you're bringing your CMMS on board for a reason. And so we want to make sure that it addresses those processes, but more importantly also we want to make sure that we have valid data. and make sure that we have the valid data is collected. So understanding how the CMMS works helps you understand what data you need to collect and what data is needed to be implemented. So the next step is all around workflow processes. As I go and implement site to sites and I interface with even some of our current clients, I'll ask if they have a collection of workflow processes, or what we call process control documentation, or at least the semblance of what is called a CMMS standing operating procedure, an SOP. So something written down and not tribal knowledge and not in somebody's head, so something that's written down that actually shows what the current business process is and what are your standing operating procedures, okay? And so we need to get a good understanding of what that looks like. Too often I would find a client really needs to stop and look at what are our workflow processes. Do we know how we do what we do today? You go ask one individual on your team, they may give you one answer. Another individual will say, well, I thought it was done this way. Another team member may come back and go, well, that wasn't what I thought at all. I thought it was done this way. Well, that tells you, gives you an indication that nobody's on the same page. All right, so really work out your workflow processes. And it's okay. It is okay to map them out, as simple as they may be today. Okay, but at least you have it mapped out and you have it written down. This is what we do today. So now I have a clear indication of how the CMMS needs to be implemented to support what you're doing today. But as this screenshot depicts, you may find that you have a process improvement need, that you're going to change one of your internal processes so that it meets the CMMS workflow, and now you end up with a new business process. So you go from a current business process, and then you'll end up with a new business process that is fit for your need. Of course, understanding your standing operating procedures. That's key step number 4. Here we're really focusing more on data management SOP. So do you have that documented and defined? Do you know what your work order type codes are and what they mean? Do you know what your work order priority codes are and what they mean, and their role and their importance? Do you have work order classes if you need to further delineate types from classes? Do you know what your problem and action and failure codes are? Do you have any maintenance coding that's defined? Okay. Do you also have, and this is really important, do you have your asset hierarchies defined? Okay, what we call asset taxonomy. Do you know what your location hierarchy looks like, and then what the asset entity hierarchy looks like? And then further, are you capturing failure modes? So that's where problem, action, failure codes come in. So what does that look like? Are you using your CMMS to document failures? Is it defined as far as your locations, assets, criticalities? Asset criticalities, there's another one. Is that defined? Often we'll find that none of this is defined. And really all they're doing is populating a field because work order type code is a required field. So there's no real thought behind what each type code means and how that influences data. And data that you're trying to get out of the system down the road so that you're making better decisions. Also with a standing operating procedure, who's responsible for entering the data? Who's responsible for creating the work order, for updating the work order, for closing the work order? Who's responsible for the assets and the attribute data that's input? Who's responsible for the parts management? Okay, and how do new parts get procured? How do they get ordered? How do they get in the system? All these are great questions. So often you really need to make sure before you get to step 5, which is actually the implementation step, you need to understand your current workflow processes and your SOPs, and also start defining your CMMS SOP based off of what you do today. just another depiction of what an SOP here, an overarching maintenance work process defined. And this is a 30,000-foot view, so we're not going to do a deep dive in here and actually start creating a process control document for each one of the boxes that you see. But ultimately, you would need to. So in this instance, we're talking about a maintenance issue is identified. So is that defined? What is a maintenance issue? How is it identified? Once it's identified, what do you do next? Well, in this indicator here, we go, is it an emergency or a breakdown? So there's a decision tree. Is the emergency work order defined? Do we know what the difference is between that and a breakdown? So then we can answer yes, no, but if you notice we have no, we go to execute non-emergency work process. Well, what does that look like? And then execute planning and scheduling process. What does that look like? Execute maintenance work execution process. All right, what does that look like? And then, of course, the closeout history and reportable metrics process. Well, what does that look like? Each one of these rectangles here actually are a separate process control document that help come together to create the maintenance work process. Map this out. That's if I could give one word of advice of a new implementation or re-implementation of any CMMS system, make sure you have your maintenance work processes mapped out. Step 5 is actually the implementation phase. As you probably realized, step 1 is not implementation. Okay, step 5 is implementation. This is where you prioritize the implementation. In this case, we're looking for prioritizing your processes to automate. So now that I've got my processes mapped out, okay, which ones can I go and automate? In other words, which ones stand the best use and utilization of the CMMS to help us with that defect elimination so that it's leaner. Okay, so we'll throw out some of these words. So it's more lean, is defect elimination is called. It's a better process, and it's faster, it's quicker, it's easier to use. Focus on collecting critical data, okay? When you start looking at collecting your data, what data are you going to be collecting? Well, obviously, the first starting point should be your critical assets and your critical information. Let's start focusing there to get it implemented. Leverage the experience of a seasoned CMMS implementer. Well, that's where eMaint comes in, and we help you. And we give that guidance, we give that mentorship and that counseling, and sometimes we're actually hired right out to actually do it. Absolutely no problem with that. But I would much rather go in and not just fish for you and hand you the fish. Of course, I would want to go in there and actually show you how to fish. We're going to fish together, and then I want you to learn that skill set so that you can be sustainable. Learn from your industry colleagues. And then define initial implementation timeline. So the initial implementation timeline is step 5. That's really the implementation piece. So what are we going to roll out first? What are we going to go live with first? And that actually is going to play in another key step. So we want to define our approach. We want to define the phase to develop all pertinent data standards and ensure consistent data collection. All these things are coming together. And again, you don't know what you don't know. Okay, so that's part of the gotcha with implementing a CMMS system. So I don't know how many have implemented a CMMS that's on the audience today that have gone back and gone shoulda, coulda, woulda. Okay, well, all these steps prior to step 5 are so that you can flush that out, so that you don't have these last-minute surprises of, well, I didn't know. If I just knew that, I wouldn't have made this decision. So leverage the experience of experienced CMMS implementer for guidance here. That's what we're here for. I can tell you right off the bat, we start seeing some of those rabbit holes that you're starting to go down when we direct you away from that. That's part of what we do. That's what we do the best. We want to make sure you're successful, because your success is our success, and you've probably heard me say that before. So step 6, where are you going to now? All right, so now we're in the configuration step. This is where we know we know where we're at, we know what processes we're going to support, and now we know what data is going to come in, or at least from a 30,000-foot view. So now we need to start configuring our software so that it can accept the data, and it can start giving us some utilization right out of the chute. So this is where you start configuring your forms, your fields, your drop-downs, your data data, exactly how is the CMMS going to interact. It is derived from your standards defined during your implementation phase and your documented SOPs and process control documents. And here we're also trying to make it a balance between the users of the system versus the users of the data. We definitely want to ensure consistency with established data standards, but you also want to make sure that you don't set or configure the CMMS system up so it's complicated to use, so it's not intuitive, so that it's ambiguous, because your users of the system are not going to provide the proper data to the users of the data if you don't have that proper balance. So now, step 7, data population and validation. This is where we're now going to go and start taking and either collecting the data and importing into the system, or we're going to go through a data conversion type of exercise where we're converting you from one CMMS platform to another. But the data population and validation step is very important because of the bottom image, garbage in, garbage out. That I don't know how many times I've asked, either a potential client or an existing client, and ask them, why is that data there? And they go, well, it's because it just existed previously, but it never was culled, it never was taken out, never was cleansed. So what are you doing with that data? We're not doing anything with it. Okay, so basically that was just garbage in, garbage out. Here I want to make sure also in the third bullet, conduct a thorough testing of established processes and procedures developed to support the maintenance function. Very paramount here. All data that goes into the system needs to be maintained, and all maintained data needs to go into the system. That basically summed up as this. We imported your data, we got your data inside the CMMS, and then to come to find out you're still using a spreadsheet somewhere else to maintain other data. And my question would be, why? Why are we doing that? So we just want to make sure that all of your maintained data goes into the CMMS, and that's where it needs to be. Okay. One of the services that we offer, and we showed that on one of the first screens, is we can help you with your alignment of your data and making sure that it does support your best practices, supports your end game and the results that you're looking for. One of the services is implementing or at least adopting an ISO 14224 approach. I don't know how many on the panel here or the attendees are familiar with ISO 14224, but it's basically a standard that was written for a specific area of the industry, the oil and gas industry, but it really supports more than just that. It really shows you and helps you understand a foundational point of view for putting in a hierarchical structure or a taxonomy, okay, that supports reliability maintenance data. Okay, so at the end game, it's called failures, right, and documenting proper failures. We definitely can be consulted with, and as a service that we offer to help you understand your data population validation piece so that it is in this alignment. Okay, so as this picture shows, we have different I guess areas of data use and location up under the top sections, and then that bleeds down into equipment and subdivisions all the way down to the part. Sometimes our clients don't give that complete thought when they're putting their data in, and so therefore we'll find assets that don't have location information in it, and you'll also find that they've got parts, but the parts aren't married up with the assets when it comes to a parts relationship, or as they call bill of materials. So we also offer, as a service, data collection, where we can actually go and help you collect your data and verify and vet your data and get that loaded in through a remediation process. That also can be done on your behalf. This is something that you may want to go out and cross-functional, a team to do this. Sometimes we do have customers that go out and hire an internship to help with this data collection and implementation, but I can tell you having your subject matter expert involved in this is well worth its weight in gold in making sure that you're getting the right data collected and the right data is imported. Okay, so step 8, training the main users. They got to know how to use the system. It's just that simple. So training is always a part of a continuous improvement program, making sure that your end users understand the software. So you have different areas that you can go into. You get training options of online training, which we offer eUniversity, and you have on-site training where we come to you. And you also have what's called train the trainer, where basically we're training you and teaching you, again, how to fish so that you can now teach others how to fish and have sustainability. But training here, basically the point that I'm coming across with step 8 is don't skip this step. Do not make the mistake of not offering training information or training opportunity to your end users. CMMS systems today are intuitive, but offering that training is just 100% a necessity. Step 9, go live strategy. What is your go live strategy going to be? Realize that with the first statement I made earlier, you're never really fully implemented. But how do you do that then? So what we do is we talk about what are called soft go lives or implementation milestones. They are continuous and they're ongoing. So your initial implementation, don't feel like that you have to implement it all. I mean, you can implement it in what's called a rolling wave effect. Okay, so you can go live first with work orders, all right, and then you can go live second with PMs, and you can go live second or third with parts, just as for an example. But a go live strategy needs to be developed and understood so that you don't feel like you're just trying to do one big huge we're going to switch this button and everything's going to be implemented and everything's going to be inputted, everything's going to be configured, everything's going to be set up all the way across the board, and that's just too much to take on. Okay, so my point here with step number 9 is how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. And don't feel like you have to do it all at one time. You can break this out into separate go live engagements. Again, yeah, there it is. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. If you need a pilot in one location and go live with them first and then rolling out over to other sites if you're a multi-site implementation. And the pilot concept also can relate to a single site. So you might want to pilot in one area or one department. All right, you don't have to launch it out for the masses all at the same time. You can actually do a gradual rollout of any part of the CMMS system that you're implementing. And then step 10. Step 10 is your process auditing. Very important. This is the whole Plan, Do, Check Act. Okay, you have to go back in and look at, all right, so now we've implemented. What worked, what didn't work? All right, so then again, what's the next step? What are we implementing next? What's the next rollout? We like where we are, or we don't like where we are and we need to course correct. So this process auditing is going to answer those questions for you. And if you want, you can go in there and do the 5 whys right here in this step. So using the data to drive decisions is the reason why you did what you did, and that's the reason why you implemented the CMMS. So is there any improvements that you can make in the next rollout to further your sustainability and to further your journey along the line? So, and more importantly, you want to establish the go live to ensure bad habits aren't being practiced. Okay, right out of the chute. So this is where your process control type of documentation, or at least your workflow documentation, or CMMS SOP documentation and earlier steps that you've derived can help support in making sure that you're auditing against best practices and that your best practices are supporting your CMMS and that your CMMS is supporting your best practices. And again, it's all about continuous improvement. You're never fully implemented, and you're going to find that you're going to do one implementation over another implementation. There's always one initial implementation, though. So when you choose your new CMMS platform, realize it's not a one and done. This is a journey, and you're going to be doing this over and over and over because it is your best tool. It's your most valuable tool that you have in your maintenance business. Okay, so you're always going to be looking for areas of improvement. Where can I go next? What can I be doing different? Where can I improve? Where can I apply some defect elimination to so that we can make things leaner? Where can I shore up this data that looks to be not quite delivering the results that I need? What can I be doing in the CMMS to assure that I get the right data? And of course, continuous improvement is also going to be contingent upon cultural change. You know, I can probably don't even have to get onto that topic, but you do not have the right culture, you will not have the right data. It's just plain and simple. So some of these continuous improvement exercises will help you identify cultural changes that are being needed. And again, cultural changes, just like a CMMS implementation, you don't do it in a broad sweep because you scare too many people. And it makes them uneasy. They don't adapt to change that readily. So you do it again, in a wave rollout type of fashion or soft go live type of fashion. So you identify areas of improvement, and then you go in there and you change in small fashion some of these areas to be more proactive or to be or to support exactly where you want to be going versus where you went yesterday. All right, Rona, pull question 2.
All right, let's go ahead and launch our next poll question. So now that you've heard Greg's presentation, he's asking, what is your primary goal on your journey toward asset management / reliability? All right, where are you? Are you looking to increase overall efficiency? Maybe you're looking to streamline and automate some workflows and processes, as Greg spoke about. Are you looking to increase your visibility and accountability and get the metrics? Are you looking to capture maintenance costs or perhaps regulatory compliance, and using the data from the CMMS for regulatory compliance is your primary goal? So I know they're all important, but we just like to know for our listeners today, wherever you are in your journey, which is the primary goal that you have right now. All right, it looks like we've got about 3/4 of the votes in, so we'll give our listeners a few more seconds. They are all so important. Okay, let's go ahead then and share the results. So it looks like, Greg, just over half, 51%, are looking to increase their overall efficiency. 18% it's to streamline, maybe automate some processes. 20% say visibility and accountability. 7% say it's capturing maintenance costs. And 4% say the primary driver is regulatory. All right, so back to you.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate those results, and that was pretty typical of what I thought would come in. I think that's a very good cross-representation. So my question to you after asking and answering that question is, where are you on your journey again, and what are you looking to do with your CMMS? And if you follow these 10 key steps, it should help you get there, okay? Without a doubt. So you don't want to skip any one of these steps. Go through these in order of how they are, and make sure they're covered, and make these ingrained in exactly your guide on how you implement or re-implement any CMMS or CMMS initiative. Again, looking for professional services what can we do to help you on that journey? We can definitely help you and guide you in any one of those areas of improvement that you're looking to achieve. Just help us out, help you out. We're here for your success. So, Rona, I think we have questions. If we do, now's a good time to field them. And I appreciate right now for everybody's listening. And that's
We'll
good.
open up the floor then. All right, thanks, Greg. Well, a few questions came in during the presentation, but again, if there are additional questions, go ahead and type them in, and we'll read them to Greg as time permits. And Greg, someone is asking about the average time for implementation if you've been using another system for about 10 years. And I realize there's probably a lot of variables, but perhaps you can either give a range or maybe you can talk to some of the factors or the variables that are going to tell someone how to plan for an implementation timeline.
Okay. So you've got a CMMS platform that you've been using for 10 years. Have you documented what works best there, and have you documented what doesn't work? All right. So I would love to look at those two, and then look at how long will it take to implement a new CMMS platform to address those deficiencies, and also to support what works best. In other words, continue that forward momentum that you've got going on and that success. It varies. The more that you get on board, the more that you have a team effort and team familiarization there, the quicker the implementation will certainly go. It can vary. So I really hard pressed, Rona, to put a time frame exactly how long an implementation could be. It's really variable and dependent upon the customer's ownership of the CMMS and the new CMMS platform, and what they're trying to achieve and the goals that they're trying to go after. Again, low-hanging fruit. Okay, I'm not going to try to answer everything, but it could be a matter of weeks, Rona, to a matter of months.
Okay, understood. That's I think that's pretty good for planning purposes. And Greg, you mentioned earlier on about re-implementation, that your presentation was could be a guideline not only for those who are implementing their first system, but who have a system, maybe aren't necessarily changing a system, but looking for, you know, a re-implementation, or I guess that was the word used, re-implementation. How would our users out there know that they're a good candidate for that? Maybe you can share a few examples of re-implementation.
Re-implementations come about, again, varied reasons. You had a situation where you may have had one individual that was the CMMS administrator or the CMMS custodian or the champion, and that individual won the lottery. and all that tribal knowledge and all that just left and went out the door. He's gone down to the Caribbean. So what do you do? Well, now you're going to re-implement and retrain and regroup and pass that baton on. Hopefully next time, if you follow these steps, you realize that we're talking about a cross-functional team here, not just one individual. We want more cross-functional ownership here. So if you find yourself in that situation, that'd be perfect for re-implementation. You may find also that you've implemented and you didn't get the results that you're looking for. Okay, well, let's go back and let's look at and assemble a core team of individuals, and make sure they are familiar with the core operation of the software. And maybe they're not getting the results that they need because they don't know that the system can do what they're actually looking for it to do. Let's look at their workflow processes and SOPs, and has that support the end game and where they're trying to go. If not, let's realign it. The system configurations may need to be changed. We may need to implement new key fields or new reference fields, new form layout, maybe some related table data, maybe some different data structuring. So what type of data needs to be populated? And then let's make sure that the users understand the new configuration and the end result of what we're looking for here so that they're comfortable using the system. Let's go live with that. Are we going to do that across the board, or are we going to do that in a pilot program within your organization? Are we going to do a test site? Or are we going to do something that will constitute a go live agenda or an outline? And then after we've done it again, let's go back and look at it one more time. Continuous improvement. Let's go do an audit. All right, what worked, what didn't work? You know, did this address our need? Okay, if not, guess what? Start from the top again, work your way down. Re-implementations are an opportunity to fix what went wrong. I mean, and that's really the end result. That's what you're looking for. Fix what went wrong. And it's no different than doing a root cause analysis on a piece of equipment. Finding out why the wheels ran off, or why it got stalled, or why the system's not providing you with the information that you need. Everybody can re-implement.
That's great. Okay. One note that we did have a couple questions that came in regarding people looking for a product demo, and we do hold those types of webinars separately, so I will respond personally to the people who have been asking that question. One of our users is asking, just as you're planning for this, if you've been using a different system, what's some of the data that you typically want to be collecting and making sure you bring across? And on a related note, an eMaint client, who I'd like to say hello to, is asking about when you're creating your asset number, can you just, Greg, in your experience, give a few guidelines on, you know, tips on how you want that to be created in a way that's going to help you get good information out of the system?
Okay, so I'll address the second half. The second half, as far as asset numbering, coming from a consultant point of view, I'm not a big fan of smart numbers when it comes to asset numbering. The asset number that's in your CMMS database here is just a key field reference for that record in the database table. And it's no different than the row numbers on the left-hand side of an Excel spreadsheet, okay? So if you have data that's important, then you'll name a cell or you'll name a column in the spreadsheet, same way in our CMMS. Smart numbering for asset IDs, irrelevant, especially in the world of a relational database. Don't need it. I think there should be more of an emphasis on standardizing your asset description and making sure your asset descriptions are standardized so that there's consistency in what you're calling your assets across the board. And it's absolutely no different. It is absolutely no difference between parts management and asset management when it comes to a CMMS in those regards. All about the descriptions. The first half of that question, Rona, I want to ask you to read it back to me again.
What's some of the data for people that are looking to implement a new CMMS and already have one installed? What's some of the data that they want to make sure they bring across or should be looking to bring across to a new system?
Okay, well, you definitely want to make sure you bring over your asset registry. You also want to make sure if you have an established and viable parts registry to bring that across. The question you'll have to ask, though, is when it comes to history, do you want to bring over history? Is your history that you've had in the past worthless? You may determine that it's worthless, but really, how about having an outside set of eyes look at that data? How about looking at a subject matter expert or consultant look at the data to see, is it really worthless? Is there anything that's salvageable from the asset work order history? You may be surprised to find that with a little bit of asset data cleansing and restructuring, in terms of work order history, it may all of a sudden become viable again. All right, so then you can bring in portions of that information back in. So any of the asset registry, any of the parts registry, any of the work order history registry that's viable, any of the costs that you've been collecting, if you've been collecting maintenance costs in the past as far as labor charges, parts charges, Have you been collecting downtime information that's relevant? And if it's not, then they'll bring it in and revamp it and re-implement it. All these data needs to be reviewed and I think vetted with a subject matter expert or consultant to understand what is the viable data and what's not the viable data. But it has to be all brought in underneath the understanding of where you want to go tomorrow. Is it going to support what you're looking for tomorrow? If it's not going to support what you're looking for tomorrow, don't bring it in. Sometimes you have to start from scratch.
Great rule of thumb, Greg. Eat the elephant one step at a time. Well,
Correct.
listen, I apologize to our listeners. We've had so many more questions, but we are at the end of our time. I want to be respectful to everyone's time, but I promise there were many more questions. We'll make sure we get answers to each of them to you later today, along with a link to this recording. And for those of you that want a copy of the presentation, just take a moment when I end the webinar and click the box. Let me know you'd like to get a copy. And Greg, thanks so much for sharing. You know, you're just a wealth of information and experience, and thanks for sharing that with all our users. And I'm sorry, with our attendees. And thanks everybody for being on the line with us today. And this is Greg and Rona from eMaint, and we'll see you all the next time. Thank you.